Hey there guys, this is Reckles with WTBGold, and today we're coming back with the TRANSMOG Top 10 for the number 5 dungeon. We're in the top 5. Today's dungeon is Halls of Stone. Every 10 runs of this dungeon got us between 100,000 gold and 230,000 gold worth of loot. If those numbers sound silly to you, it's probably because you haven't run this dungeon recently. We talked in the last episode, number 6, about why Wrath of the Lich King gear might be getting more expensive. But if you wanted to look at some of the historical prices on your specific server, some of the biggest sets are the Magnetor set, the Drumonger set, the Gryno set, Wolvar, the Heroes set, and then you've got weapons like the Trollish Destroyer, Trollish Decollator, the Piercing Glaive, the Acute Shortbow. Pretty much everything that drops out of this dungeon is really expensive. And that's because it's a different level range than what most people get when they're farming Wrath content. Like Ulduar and ICC, which hundreds of thousands of people run every week, those are all level 80 enemies. So the loot you're getting is only like level 77 to 80 loot. This is a level 76 dungeon, so you're getting 72 to 80 gear. You're getting the whole spectrum of Wrath stuff. But I'm not excited about this dungeon because of the gold. I'm excited because it's a wonderful tool to teach about farming efficiency. There's 60 enemies here, and each lap, if you do a full clear, takes like 12 minutes. So I'm going to need some help on this. I'm going to need to go to an efficiency expert, a farming phenom. You may know him better as the greatest paladin in the world, always doing it for them kids. You probably haven't thought about him in a while. Athene. Athene's most well known in the WoW community for getting a lot of world firsts and getting a couple suspensions for using some questionable means. But that just means he's really good at finding the most efficient way of farming XP. He did the same thing in Diablo, where he got a world first in D3. And that's what I wanted to focus on. So early on in D3, before it was nerfed, there was a really popular farm called the Scorpion Run. Pretty much you go to Ariat Crater, one of the levels, and there's a whole bunch of scorpions. You just go through, you kill everything in there all the way up to Azmodan, and then you leave and you zone back in, start a new game, and you do the whole thing over again until your eyes bleed. Well, Athene took a different approach to this and was able to use this approach to get 3 times as much loot as his competition. First, he didn't do a full clear. He only cared about density and the most density he could get. He went from a pack of 20 scorpions to another pack of 20 scorpions. Even if there was a pack of 3 or 4 or 5 guys off in the corner, he didn't have time for that. He just moved on to the next big pack he could find. And third, he built for speed. He wanted his move speed to be as fast as possible, as long as he was over the threshold of being able to one-shot things. So how can we bring this into Halls of Stone? First, you want an add-on like Faster Loot that lets you just loot items as quickly as possible, removes the loot window essentially. And second, you want to be able to sell things as quickly as possible. So I use an add-on called Scrap. There are lots of others out there, but this lets you just, as soon as you click on your Mammoth or your Yak or your Brutosaur, it just instantly sells everything. And a lot of these add-ons have customizable lists where you can add boss drops to the list to auto-vendor the boss drops. This saves you a ton of time when you're farming 30, 40, 50 dungeons in a row. Next, for move speed, you've got the obvious things like using Bear Tartar, having the right talents that give you the most move speed, and making sure you know which spells your class has access to that gives you a little boost. Making sure you have a move speed trinket, or the gold boss in the new raid drops some move speed stuff. You can have your Azurite traits be spec towards move speed, and you can even do some sneaky things like using the Mist of Pandaria boot enchant, or the Warlords of Draenor cape enchant. Now, those you can't apply to current content loot, but you can just buy a Mist of Pandaria boot or a Warlords of Draenor cloak and just apply it to that. It doesn't matter if you're level 97 in greens or if you're mythic geared level 120, as long as you're killing things, the faster the better. But let's talk about the route specifically, because here's where we're gonna get a little nerdy. So, Halls of Stone has 60 enemies and takes 12 minutes per lap. So, I'm going to introduce a new density metric here, and that's seconds per enemy. It takes 12 seconds for each enemy. And essentially, this is just another way of thinking about dungeons. If you took all 60 enemies and you just lined them up in a straight line, and you just ran down that line, it would take you 12 minutes to finish that entire run. And if you space them out evenly, there would be 12 seconds between each enemy. So the first thing we can do to optimize is, this is the dungeon where there's that one boss where you just sit and wait for like 6 minutes as like 3 enemies come in at a time once every minute. It's annoying, it's frustrating. We're just gonna skip that boss. Now, that means that we can't unlock the door to the final boss, but that's okay. That's just 2 enemies out of 60. We don't care. And that cuts our lap down to 4 minutes. We just tripled our efficiency with that one change. But here's the cool thing, and here's where the seconds per enemy gets really neat. We now have 58 enemies that we're killing in 4 minutes. That gives us 4.2 seconds per enemy. We now have a threshold. So we can go through, count up enemies in some of the other wings and time how long it takes to go back and forth. And if that wing is more efficient, then we keep it in. If it's less efficient, then we cut it out, and that brings our new average lower and lower and lower, so we're getting constantly more and more efficient. Now, let's start off with the Crystalline Quarry. The cave here has 14 enemies. We kill them all in 40 seconds. That gives us 3 seconds per enemy. That's better than we already had, so we're gonna keep the cave in. The Hall of Repose with the Maiden, that has 4 enemies, and that takes us 23 seconds. 6 seconds per enemy, we're gonna cut that out. We don't care about that. The Hall of the Highfather is kind of interesting, where it's 10 enemies in 51 seconds, which is 5 seconds per enemy. That's not very good, so we'd cut it out, but you can just look and see that the first half of it is a little bit more dense. So we can cut it in 2 and analyze that. So the Tribunal of Ages, that's 3 enemies, takes 24 seconds to go back and forth. The Hall of the Highfather, that has 7 enemies, takes 27 seconds. So the first half is 3.8 seconds per enemy. That's better than our threshold. The second half is 8 seconds per enemy, so we're gonna ignore that. But just looking at the map, you can tell where the really juicy bits are. This first little hallway, that's 6 enemies in 6 seconds. That's 1 enemy a second. That's amazing. The little roundabout there, that's 14 enemies in 17 seconds. That's 1 enemy a second. The little bit that I call Main Street, that's 12 enemies in 15 seconds. That's also about 1 second an enemy. That's also amazing. And suddenly, it makes the cave and the Hall of the Highfather not look as good. 3 seconds and 4 seconds isn't very good compared to 1 second. It feels like it's dragging us down. If you just run off to the side and kind of jump up, you can taunt the first pack of 3 from the Crystalline Quarry. And then when you're running back, you can taunt the guy in from the first big golem guy from Halls of the Highfather. And that gives us 36 enemies that we're killing in 1 minute on the nose. So my route for this dungeon, you walk in the front door, you do the roundabout, you go down Main Street, taunt the guy on the left and the right, you kill everyone, and then you head out. And what we're doing there, by ignoring 40% of the enemies and 40% of the loot in the dungeon, we're bringing our time down per lap from 12 minutes to 1 minute. And that's increasing our efficiency by more than 6 times. Now, if you just want to go out and you want to farm and have fun and just run some dungeons, great. But what my goal is with this video is to get you guys to kind of internalize this feeling of what good density really feels like. We want to kill as many things as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, so then we can go out and raid or PvP or just enjoy the game however we want. That's what I want from you guys. So, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like the video, all that. I'm also revamping my Patreon. I've decided to just do a monthly farm with my Patreon supporters. Just go out, kill some dragons or whatever, and get some pets, make some gold with y'all. I'm not going to stream it or anything. This is just kind of a low-key hangout and really just kind of chat with y'all. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Good luck and happy gold making.